Welcome back to another video. Hope y'all having a great day. Now that we know who each team will be hiring in the 2026 cycle, I figured I'd give my opinions to each of the hirings. So with no further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with the most recent one, which would be the Arizona Cardinals hiring Mike LaFleur, and it's an interesting head coach. Um, yeah, I think most people thought they would have thought Chris Shula or even Nate Schulhouse would have gotten a job over LaFleur, but he felt like the top guy for the Cardinals after most of the top options were hired. Obviously the younger brother of Matt LaFleur, has maybe some head coaching genes in there, but it is an interesting hire. First year guy, which most of these guys are first year guys. There are a couple who are on their second or third team, so we'll see. Maybe the Cardinals wanted to bring in an offensive minded guy to fix out that offense, and maybe LaFleur does work out. It's just an interesting hire for a team that felt like kind of like the Browns. No team really wanted the job because of the uncertainty at quarterback and all the big time questions. So felt like this was a less coveted job, which maybe that's why Arizona took so long to hire, because most coaching candidates didn't really want to um, get hot. Like they didn't want the job, but we'll just have to see. I'll give this a C plus. I mean, it's a decent hire, but only time will tell whether it works out or not. Moving on to the Raiders hiring Clint Kubiak, which I think is an A plus for a hire. Obviously the son of Gary Kubiak, so you know has those coaching genes in him. And look, a Vegas team that has needed some good offense for a while. Obviously going to get Fernando Mendoza with the top pick. So, and it felt like they were going to go offensive to bring in a guy alongside Mendoza to work out. And I mean, we've seen Kubiak. He was with the Niners a couple of years ago. Obviously, helped out Sam Darnold. Then goes to the Saints, and if that team had stayed healthier, they could have been a threat, especially we saw early on. And then with Seattle helping them, obviously he can't officially be hired until after the Super Bowl, but he's going to be the next Vegas head coach, and I love this hire. I think as long as Vegas improves that offensive line and brings in some better wide receivers, this offense will be great, and maybe the Raiders finally can have some success with a first year head coach after striking out with, you know, older, or not older head coaches, but well, older than Pete Carroll, but like second year coaches like Josh McDaniels, like maybe Mendoza, Genty, Bowers can be that foundation for Kubiak to build this offense. And the Raiders maybe can finally become more relevant um, in the years to come. Went on to the Browns hiring Todd Monken, which I'm going to give it D minus probably. I did not like this hire. Like Monken, I know he has ties to Cleveland to the coach there before going to Georgia, and he is a phenomenal offensive mind. Like he helped Lamar win back-to-back MVPs and really helped that Ravens offense um, become a better offense after they moved on from Greg Roman, which was the right decision. It's just this hire alienated one side of the ball because Jim Schwartz, who felt like he was right for the position, especially when most other coaches were withdrawing their names every other day. It felt like he was the right choice, and he is most definitely going to not be a part of the Browns coaching staff in 2026. He's under contract, but he's left. It's kind of like what happened with Wink Martindale after 2023 season. Although that was more so him and Brian Dable butting heads, but he left and the Giants just let him go. So, like, Monken is a great offensive mind, and whoever is the quarterback in Cleveland, whether it's Shador, whether it's somebody else, he'll get these like he'll have this offense playing really well. It's just you alienated one side of the ball, and I just don't know if it was the right decision to not keep the guy who had the defense, which was the only side of the ball, really in the last couple of years, keeping this team competitive. Like the offense was horrible, but the defense was playing amazingly under Schwartz, where they were the reason they made the playoffs in 2023. They were the reason why this team was still competitive, even though their offense was horrible. And while I like Monken as a coach, and I think he can be able to coach up the Browns offense, it's just they alienated one of the coaches. It's just not something you want to do when that was the only side of the ball that was really doing anything. Like the offense under Stefanski was just like over the years just started to go down. Schwartz, had this defense playing amazingly, and then they're they're gonna have to let him go, and so that's what I'm gonna be. Joe Brady, I'll give it a C. It felt kind of like the Bills trying to keep the same roster, but not really. Like it felt like they wanted to keep the team together by keeping somebody from the coaching staff as the head coach. I don't know if it was the right move because Joe Brady, yes, had Josh Allen playing amazingly last year and really helped out that offense after it was kind of getting stagnant under Ken Dorsey. But it's a very it's a very interesting choice because you know because yes, the offense will be the same as it was. It's like, was it really the right decision to just promote somebody? Because I feel like a lot of the times when coaches get promoted, whether it's offensive or defensive, I feel like that doesn't always work out. You're keeping you're keeping basically the same coaching staff. There's a new DC, obviously. You're really keeping the same coaching staff on the offensive side. And I feel like it's a very interesting choice for the Bills. Maybe it works out and Joe Brady looks like a phenomenal head coach, but I feel like they might have wasted an opportunity to bring in somebody else to have this Bills team exceeding expectations. Because it felt like later on in Sean McDermott's tenure, the team was like they were still playing up to Bills level, but it felt like they hit a ceiling, and I feel like Joe Brady made this team. I feel like he'll just keep them the same, and I don't know if that's the right hire for a team that isn't win now mode, isn't trying to win a Super Bowl, especially when they have the Patriots now in their division, who are back to contending. It felt like they were just staying the same. but just having a new man in charge. But on to the Steelers with Mike McCarthy, and I mean, I think this is an F. Sorry to Mike McCarthy, but it's the same thing. Like you bring in Mike McCarthy is just an older version of Mike Tomlin. Like he's nearly 10 years older, and it feels like the wrong decision. Like it felt like Pittsburgh's always used to bringing in a young defensive-minded coach. You know, Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin. I get the offense has not been that great, and you want to bring in an offensive-minded guy, but why not bring in a young offensive-minded guy? Like Mike McCarthy has the same things Mike Tomlin. Like, yes, he'll have the Steelers maybe compete. Like, he'll have the Steelers maybe win more games than Tomlin did in those last couple of years. But it's like he's the offensive version of Mike Tomlin at this point. Both guys haven't won a playoff game since January of 2017, so 9 years. Like they brought him in to develop a quarterback. Maybe it's Will Howard, maybe it's somebody else, but it just feels like it felt like the Steelers just stayed stagnant. Like they just didn't want to have any change. So they're like, let's bring in a guy who will help us out on the offensive side, but isn't really going to change anything. I just feel like a Steelers team that kind of needed a new direction, kind of needed to um sort of blow things up and enter into a true rebuild. And I feel like with Mike McCarthy, he's not going to want to rebuild. He's going to want to try to compete. And I feel like the Steelers team just roster wise isn't that good. And I feel like while the offense might be better than it has been the last couple of years, it's not like that's going to change anything. And I feel like it was the wrong decision to basically bring in offensive Mike Tomlin. Put on to the Ravens hiring Jesse Minter, and this is a phenomenal hire. Um, Minter coached under John Harbaugh in Baltimore, and then took over from Mike Macdonald after he came back to the Ravens. Minter went to Michigan after Macdonald came back to the Ravens after being in Michigan. Then he goes with Harbaugh, the other Harbaugh, to the Chargers, and look, he's gonna have this Ravens defense playing better than they have the past couple of years. I really like his hires at Declan Doyle, Anthony Weaver. Like I like those hires, and look, he he's the right kind of coach for the Ravens. A defensive minded guy. He's going to be calling the plays, which I think will help out. He's also the first Ravens head coach to ever be calling plays. But um, like it's a great hire. I'm giving it an A+ because, like, yes, he's a first year head coach, and you don't know really what you're gonna get, but he's coached in Baltimore, so he has relationships with a lot of the players from his time there. So he obviously, is going to understand those guys who and he'll be able to get this defense playing like it was a couple of years ago. And I think he'll be able to show that he can be a great head coach. And it feels like the Ravens knowing we need to bring in a guy who can eh, get us over the hump. And I think Jesse Minter can do that, which is why I think it's an amazing hire. I think the Ravens will benefit from a guy who, sorry, who is going to be calling the plays and is going to be more involved with the team. Because I feel like with Harbaugh and even Brian Billick, it felt like while yes they were great coaches, um, it felt like since they weren't really calling the plays weren't really those type of coaches. Billick was the offensive coordinator in Minnesota before coming to the Ravens. It felt like they were the type of head coach that they're great at bringing in good coordinators and having this team playing well. But I feel like in this day and age, you need a guy who is going to call plays and is going to be kind of connected with the players. And I think that's what the Ravens need, and it's going to be a phenomenal hire for them. Who knows? Maybe in a couple of years, they finally get over that hump and they win that championship, and they prove that it was the right decision to move on from Harbaugh, and Jesse Minter's the right guy. But on to Robert Saleh with the Titans, and I think this is a good hire. At first, yeah, I wasn't really that excited because I was like, I felt like Saleh was going to go to a team with more stable at the organization. But I mean, then I kind of realized because he brings in Brian Daboll to be the offensive coordinator, which I love. He's going to be calling the plays, unlike he did with the Jets, and I think it's going to work out. I think kind of like with the Jets, like we're kind of seeing with Aaron Glenn. It's hard to win with bad ownership, handling team affairs, and so I feel like Saleh away from the Jets with the Titans, who are actually a pretty good organization. I mean, Mike Vrabel for a while, had his team contending. That was the wrong decision to fire him, but I think Saleh, he's going to have his defense playing well, and he has a quarterback this time, so Brian Daboll, I think, will be able to have this Titans offense playing well, and it's also a good decision to bring in a former head coach at one of your coordinators, because then it's like that guy most likely isn't going to get a second job, because like most coaches who get fired and are going to be a coordinator, it more than likely means that they didn't work out with that team. So it because I feel like it's a good hire for Saleh to have Dayball come in and really have that offense playing well, knowing that most teams aren't going to try to poach him, and he can have this defense playing well. And I feel like it could work out. I feel like Tennessee, if they make the right moves, bring in some offensive playmakers for Cam Ward, help out that defense. I feel like they could be contending in the AFC South. And I feel like Tennessee could be a team, kind of a surprise team next year if they made the right moves. And I think this was a great hire to bring in Robert Saleh. So I give it a B plus. Moving on to the Dolphins, hiring Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator, and kind of felt like this was their second option. It kind of felt like they wanted John Harbaugh, and that's why they fired Mike McDaniel, and they didn't get him. I actually think Hafley can be a good coach. I know a lot of people are gonna say, "Oh, but when Michael Parsons went down, that defense wasn't that great." But he got a lot out of that defense, and I feel like yes, the quarterback situation is not good, so obviously he's gonna have to figure that out. And Miami has a lot of holes on that roster, but I feel like if he brings in the right coach, he's also like John Eric Sullivan, who also is coming from the Packers. Like usually bringing in two guys from the same organization, kind of like what the Bills did with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. It tends to work out because usually when you bring two guys from one organization, they're able to kind of put their blueprint together and build the roster their way. I mean, I feel like it could work out. There obviously the QB questions, but I feel like he'll have this defense playing well. Obviously, need to help out that secondary, getting better players out there. But I feel like he'll have this defense playing really well, and I feel like the offense, as long as it, what's the word? I feel like as long as the offense is fine, I feel like Halfley can have this team competing. I said earlier with the Bills that it was a very interesting option to just promote Joe Brady and instead of bringing in somebody else to help out. I also felt like since they promoted Brandon Beane, it felt like they just wanted to keep somebody from the coaching staff as the head coach instead of bringing somebody else who would have a different perspective on how to build a team. But I don't know. I feel like if Miami makes the right moves, they maybe could start competing. And they've beaten the Bills. You know, they they've beaten the Bills a lot of times, mostly mostly in recent years in Miami. But I feel like I'm gonna give this C plus, maybe B. I think it's a good hire. I feel like a lot of people are disrespecting it because Halfley's defenses after Parsons got injured started to play not that great. But I feel like the team was banged up and like against the Bears. I know the wild card game was horrible, but against the Bears, um, in that second matchup post Parsons injury, um, the defense was still playing well. Like everybody looked at that Ravens game with Derrick Henry, but I feel like this could be a good hire as long as they bring in the right quarterback and it works out. Moving on to Kevin Stefanski with the Falcons, and I think it's a interesting. I think it's a good hire. Stefanski, it didn't work out in Cleveland, but I mean, he brought them the most success they had had since rejoining the NFL in '99. Because like he brought them to two playoff appearances, including winning the first playoff game since um coming back into the NFL in '99. Like he had this team playing well. It's just the owner was involved a lot. Like there was too many guys involved with the roster building, which led to like so much turnaround and um led to the offensive side of the ball really struggling later in his tenure. And I feel like there are concerns at QB, but I feel like he's gonna want to keep Kirk Cousins. He worked with him in Minnesota, being their OC before taking over as the Browns head coach. So I feel like that relationship he can keep him, and he has a lot of good weapons. If they are able to keep Kyle Pitts, you have Bijan and Drake London. The offensive line is really good. Tyler Algier, if they're able to keep him, like it feels like a perfect spot for Stefanski. Stable ownership in Arthur Blank, which I know a lot of people are going to be like Falcons, good ownership. But yeah, Arthur Blank is a good owner. They just needed good, stable coaching, and I feel like Stefanski, as long as he gets that quarterback position right in the future post Kirk Cousins, I feel like it will most definitely work out, and the Falcons will have success in a division which is always wide open. I mean, they had the same record as the division winner. It's just they got swept by them. So I feel like this is a great hire. I'm gonna give it an A plus. I feel like Stefanski, and he keeps Jeff Ulbrich, which is always good when you keep, one side of the ball that was doing well last year, and you just bring in his offensive staff, and I think the Falcons can compete and possibly even win that division with the right moves in the offseason to keep guys, and that could be a real threat in the NFC. And then finally, John Harbaugh to the Giants. I like this move too. I think the Giants can be most definitely competitive in this NFC East because we saw the Eagles struggle. If it wasn't for the rest of the teams just not being that great or banged up, the Eagles would not have won this division. look, John Harbaugh, great head coach. The Ravens just need to move on, but a Giants team is getting a guy who will be able to bring in a culture. Like it was already reported that he's like redoing everything to do scouting. Like he's basically putting his own blueprint onto the Giants, and I think it might work out. No, I do think it was interesting that they kept Joe Shane for his not so great history um, of drafting and free agency, but at the same time, I feel like you know maybe they just need a better head coach to develop those guys. And I feel like Harbaugh, he has a young quarterback, young playmakers on the offense, a really good defense. It was reported that they're bringing Matt Nagy to be the offensive coordinator, which is an interesting choice. We'll see how that works out. Especially Nagy's second tenure with the Chiefs did not go as well as the first one. Um, but I think it's a plus higher. The Giants needed a guy, a culture changer, you know, because ever since they let Tom Coughlin go, it's just been firing after firing after firing. Brian Daboll looked like he was finally the guy. It didn't work out. But I think Harbaugh will work out. He'll have this Giants team competing in an NFC East where the Eagles might be the front runners, but they're not the overwhelming favorite. So that'll do it for today's video. Hope you guys comment, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. But until then, bye.